Donald Trump welcomed by the to the royal court by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. He'll later head to Qatar and then on to my home base, the UAE, later this week. Well, here CEOs from virtually every major US company, including Elon Musk, are present as the White House eyes foreign investment and other business opportunities. This hour, they are attending an investment forum where the two leaders are expected to speak and to sign agreements. Well, outside of these meetings today, elsewhere in this region, the war in Gaza drags on with more death and more suffering. Israel's blockade of humanitarian aid now in its third month. Well, we've got a lot to unpack here. Let's start by our senior White House reporter, Betsy Klein. It's good to have you here in region. Thank you. The Saudi perspective on this trip, laid out by the Saudi ambassador to the US, is the following, and I quote her from an op-ed earlier today in the Washington Times. Quote, "In the kingdom, we believe that a sustainable partnership begins with reciprocity." She talks about the importance of this relationship being mutually beneficial. I know from the US perspective, this is primarily about getting deals done. Saudis want slightly more than that, it has to be said.
That's absolutely right. I mean, for President Trump, this is about establishing himself as a deal maker and somebody who can get a win on the global stage, particularly after all that damage that we've seen from his so-called Liberation Day, imposing significant tariffs across the board on China and every other country. We saw all of that pomp and circumstance and pageantry. The president, of course, a reality TV star, he is acutely aware of what the imagery looks like. He got that 21-gun salute, Arabian horses. He walked a royal purple carpet with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. His hosts have really provided the president this very warm hospitality, a warm welcome, and imagery that is sure to please the president. But, you know, Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, he has worked very hard to cultivate these ties with the Trump administration. His country was essentially isolated after the 2018 killing of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi, and he's worked very hard to sort of rebuild and repair his standing on the world stage. Trump is an important part of that.
Now, I'll give you some observations here as far as atmosphere is concerned, because I was at the lunch just earlier, the official welcoming lunch. The entire Saudi cabinet was there. I mean, those who power the engine of this economy and society there alongside the Crown Prince. And many of the US cabinet were there, you know, a plethora of CEOs, both from the US and indeed significant business partners here as well. And I have to say that the atmosphere between Mohammed bin Salman and the US president was extremely cordial, as it was between many of the Saudi princes and cabinet members and the other members of the Trump administration who were here: Howard Lutnick, Pete Hegseth, Rubio, Scott Bessent. So atmospherically, as we move into what is going to be a very, you know, busy 24 hours, it looks like there is some warmth, some certain warmth amongst these two administrations. Question is, what will success look like for the US at the back end of this trip? And conversely, to a degree, what will success look like for the Saudis?
Well, I think to your point, I mean, the president really wants to show that he is able to get some major Saudi investments in the United States, as well as from Qatar and the UAE when he goes there later this week. And I think for him, it's really all about showing that he can make deals, showing that he has these relationships. These are not traditional U.S. allies, and the president has really reimagined the role of the U.S. in the world and really has I think the point of his trip being to Saudi Arabia as his first stop, the first major international trip, shows that he is putting outsized importance on these countries as alliances, and in a way that is so different from so many of his predecessors. This is also a trip that echoed that trip he took in 2017, the first trip of his first administration to Saudi Arabia. Of course, notably, Israel is not on the list of stops this trip, and that really underscores how much the geopolitical situation has changed.
The kingdom is very keen and astutely aware that this administration will see a very different Saudi from that which they saw back in 2017. This is a place, frankly, transformed, both so far as society and the economy is concerned. But you're right to point out that Trump's America First policies, he sees huge advantage from what is the sovereign cash from these countries of the Gulf. But I can tell you, just talking to sources here, this is not a blank check. Certainly not from Saudi Arabia on this occasion, nor from Qatar, nor the UAE. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes out of this. I'm told that something like 100 deals will be cut at this investment forum. There may be a lot of window dressing in that. Let's be quite clear about that. Some of those deals will be MOUs. They won't all necessarily be hard agreements. Some of them will be agreements to agree, as it were.
Yeah.
But certainly it's good to have you here, and we will continue to monitor what is, a very pivotal moment, I think, in US Gulf relations in what is a new era for this region.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, several Trump administration officials say the US president's top priority is obtaining economic agreements. He's set to speak at the Saudi-US Investment Forum here in Riyadh in about an hour's time. Let's stay on this with Mohammed. He's a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute. With both leaders under pressure to deliver at home, just how crucial is this trip, and are these deals, as it were, that are expected to be signed?
Great to be back with you, Becky. The Gulf countries, and specifically Saudi Arabia, are in a very unique position when it comes to the global economic situation. The region is the new Europe in the mindset of President Trump, meaning this is a region of growth, a region that has the financial clout to be able to invest massively in major priority areas. And clearly he sees this region as a big priority area for his own economic agenda when it comes to securing deals for his own for American companies that want to make sure that they have access to overseas markets that's high growth, very relevant, that could act as a force multiplier for American companies in third market opportunities.
Trump wants to showcase massive Saudi investment into the US, while MBS seeking American backing for what is this ambitious vision. We were just discussing my observations of what was very cordial relations. I mean, the lunch ahead of this investment forum this afternoon that I attended just earlier on with about 250 people. Extremely pleasant atmosphere, I have to say, particularly for those who've just got off AF1, which is a long trip. Here, the president stood for an hour greeting people in a line, which I have to say I thought was quite impressive. But now they're here. What risks, if either side fails to really nail this relationship, to ensure that this relationship delivers on a sort of national security basis for both sides?
I'll be quite frank here. I think the US-Saudi relationship are anchored in two leaders that have respect for each other. I think the personal relationship is the main anchor here. And I think anything they're able to secure on this trip is going to be upside when it comes to MOUs. The biggest challenge in any trip, let's be frank here, is how can you make those MOUs reality? How can you transform those MOUs on actual brick and mortar investment, that you have a factory, you have a holding company that's able to act on the MOU. That's always a challenge that we see. But it's very clear to me from the names that we have been seeing in the US-Saudi Investment Forum that there's a level of seriousness in terms of who is speaking, what they're speaking about. Clearly, there's almost like a roadmap for how US-Saudi relationship will go from here.
We've spoken before, and you and I have discussed the importance of geotech in what is a new world of international affairs, the sort of paradigm shifting. We still talk geopolitics, we still talk geoeconomics, and we should talk about that in the context of this trip for Donald Trump. But geotech really sits at the heart of Donald Trump's foreign policy, it seems, and at the heart of these burgeoning, emerging economies. Just explain, if you will, briefly.
Let me start with this. When President Trump came to office first time in 2017, he made he broke with the traditional consensus around China policy and the traditional consensus around technologies. Meaning, when he came to power in 2017, we started seeing a major rethinking around how we should think about Chinese equipment in 5G networks, in cloud regions, and we have seen U.S. pressure through what we call the Clean Network Initiative to push allies and partners away from Chinese hardware. So his team was the first to be able to pressure allies and partners, make the question of Chinese tech a major pillar of dialogues and bilateral agreements. And Biden team built on that, and he's now back to power, and his team is very much focused on the question of how the United States can win the IRA